Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Brook with Brad Kooima with Kooima Kooima Varilek. Markets on Thursday, ending mostly higher in the grains. Livestock futures mostly lower, including cattle, Brad, even though we had some higher cash trade, especially in the north.
Isn't that the truth, Michelle? Thanks. Good to be on. Thanks for having me on. The old guy broker comment here that comes to mind for me on a day like today when the cash probably new all-time highs. There was a few cattle up in my neck of the woods at about 193 picked up. Yep, 193. You heard that right. Some 191, 191.50 even. I sold some cattle 191.50 to a major picked up. Then why was it lower, Brad? That old phrase of the market tops the day the news is the best is ringing in our ears. And not with a little bit of frustration here, I think, on most people's part here. This is the third time in 2 weeks, I believe, where we've had this rush into new highs, market trading great, the news is great, and then poof, it's like you stepped off a ladder in the dark. You didn't know where the top rung was. You tip over and we have a reversal down. Now, April closed higher. The front month's okay. Back month's all lower. Another sign that the market acts tired. Now, tomorrow's report maybe has something to do with that, I would think, maybe, Michelle.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because we're looking at placements. 106 is kind of the average trade, I guess, or a little bit in some change.
106.3, I believe, but I think that's you're starting at the right spot. I mean, I remember we literally started talking about this cattle on feed report the day after the last cattle on feed report. Okay. And then that capacity we were talking about, okay, so the January weather, slowed down some of the placements, blah, blah, blah. But it felt like during February that the placements were really big. Now they are guessing it pretty decent at 106. It was leap year, so we do have an extra day rather, compared to a year ago. I hope that placement number isn't worse than 106. I'm not going to lie. If I had a bit of beer on it, I probably would have picked a number higher than 106. But we'll see how the thing comes out. There's a couple of us that, I like the USDA, but how they came up with a couple of these placement numbers the last while is beyond me. And the numbers that we thought we were going to have in the first quarter haven't showed up. Slaughter still 5.5% less than a year ago when we're supposed to be killing more. But we'll see once, maybe the market gets a bit of a reality check on the report tomorrow. We'll probably see that we've got a few more cattle on feed than last year. Last year, the cash market was about 165. We're obviously at a whole different level than last year. So I'm not all bared up, don't get me wrong, but we're at levels these are high levels, levels that we rarely have seen. So, as far as a producer going into a cattle on feed report that I think has got a little bit of risk to it, I would certainly be paying attention.
Thursday, the market also had to deal with the plant fire at the beef plant at Liberal, Kansas. Slaughter came in at 117. So do you think that the market really had to work through it? I mean, was it a market factor?
Well, I can tell you at 6 o'clock this morning, I was certainly terrified that it was going to be when I heard about the news. Yeah, it was a roller coaster day, between new all-time highs in cash cattle and to start the day with, oh no, not another fire. It's not a Holcomb of 2019, thank goodness. Started with a reefer truck, I understand, parked near the plant. It spread to another truck, maybe two partly. Was never, the plant itself never on fire. The walls got warm. Some smoke got into one of the coolers that they had to check, clean, whatever. And I think they lost maybe a shift, and you can see that against the slaughter level a little bit today. But I'm happy to say that it's not a market factor, and they're back to business as usual. And as quickly as we got that news kind of, okay, we understood what that was, the cash market started to channel in there all morning long. First 180, then 80 or 190, then 91, some 302 bids, stuff like that. So yeah, I feel like I need a nap. It was a wild day for news on the cattle for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then it's Thursday, so we get actual slaughter figures plus the weights. And what did those do? Because last week was a big shocker, 20 pounds over a year ago. So
right. The one that everybody watches a little different thing, but the one I think is as accurate as any is the steer and heifer carcass weights. That's the one that I write down every Thursday. Last week was, we were week on week, I believe, up 8 pounds, and a year on year up 20. So this morning's data was 1 pound less than the week prior. and 15 pounds over a year ago. So it's like we kind of flattened that weight out, which frankly is still contra-seasonal because you always have lower weights this time of year. But at least it wasn't quite the drama that last Thursday was. I still worry that potentially we're backing up some cattle, either because the packers slowed down the kill or because the weather has been so excellent and we've had an unprecedented spring around here. Cattle are performing like it's October. I mean, the lots are dry and so between that two, I would urge us all, let's stay really current, because when you're current, you got leverage. You see what happens today when you have leverage. But I want to pay attention to that weight deal and to make sure we stay nice and current here. And that should help with the futures being discounted now. One would think that would help.
Okay. What about the hog market? Down again today. I think this is the third day in a row, but we had been making new contract highs in those deferred contracts, I think June on back. So is this just a little profit taking or hedge pressure or what?
I'm thinking it's a correction. And maybe I'll be proved wrong tomorrow, but both April and June held right smack on the 40-day moving average, which is a good spot to start in terms of looking for support. We've actually heard better demand news relative to the pork. Some of it's been at the expense of beef, but I think we're building a little market share with the pork price where it is in relation to other meats. Don't hear much from China, would like to, but, I guess I don't hear anything necessarily bearish out of that front either. But kind of thinking we're approaching that time of year where we ought to seasonally put a little money back on it. So I color me a little bit friendly on the hogs within reason. That market's hard to predict.
Absolutely. And grains, although we ended off of our session highs, we still ended to the plus side. Soybeans made new highs for the move. And, how much of this has been just fun short covering because we're into end of month and end of quarter. And plus we've got big reports next week.
Well, I think quite a bit of it's that, Michelle, what I talked about over and over. What does it take to get the funds to come out of some of their short grains? Especially the corn. Well, we finally did it. We got above the 20-day, then we got above the 40-day. So some of this, I think, is, like you say, month in, quarter in, short covering, or it probably would have happened anyway, no matter what day of the month it was, because the chart finally looks better. And they were even above $12 on the front end of the beans, a level that some people thought we were never going to get to. I'm a little friendly to both of them, partly because of the calendar. Normally what happens here is that you get a little fluff going into the incentive to plant rally, let's call it that. We're hearing some talk about, are you going to see some acre shift? We're going to move some corn acres into bean acres because of inputs, poor prices, high interest. That would make sense to us. You're hearing some of the weather people talk a little more threatening about, are we going to go right back into that dry cycle again here in the U.S.? Obviously, how do you know that in March? But I don't know, and less than perfect weather even in South America. So we got a little bit of gas in the tank here. I don't think we're going to run away unless we have some real bad weather. But I would like to think we could put a little more money on between now and May 1.
Yeah, it's going to be a grind, though, don't you think? Just because every time you get above these levels, then you get farmers selling, kind of offsetting it a bit.
Absolutely. We'll see once just where that push pull meets. Here the basis on the corn is actually firmed up some, and some of that's because of the ethanol grind, which their margins are record, and we've got we've got like 9 ethanol plants within 100 miles of me. So that does drive the bus a little bit in my area, maybe unfairly, but I mean, as compared to other areas is what I meant. But yeah, we're not going to get some great big move back where we're above $13 cash beans or anything like that. Not without being in the crop season and having genuinely a weather problem. But maybe we can grind a little more off of the thing. I wondered about November beans back to 1240, 1250, that area, that gap area, that first low that we made last fall. That would be an area that I think if I was a hedger, I would maybe target that's where some of my sales would start. If we could get the November beans back in that window, and then if you could get December corn like close to $4.90 to $5, someplace in there.
If you could get wheat to rally, you could help the corn really come along too, couldn't you?
Oh, it's like a albatross. Yeah, it dragging that wheat around, and apparently the whole world's full of it. We had one day this week where we actually talked about the Ukraine again for a little while, where they were having trouble, with some activity in their port with some bombing and stuff like that. And then we had that, the wheat came back, and you could see right away the corn responds to that. But unfortunately, there's no shortage of wheat anywhere, it doesn't feel like, and that's going to be an anchor.
No doubt. Thanks for joining us. Brad Kooima with Kooima Kooima Varilek. That's Markets Now.